Okay, so I'm going to go over yesterday's lesson, which is on page 369 on your Go Math workbook. Okay, the book that we use in the classroom. Page 369, lesson 9.1, line plots. Okay, so we are going to use a line plot to classify all of these fractions that you can see here. Okay, and then we're going to draw x's on top of each fraction. Okay, so using line plots and fractions is very simple. Okay, so follow along. Okay, make sure that you have your book opened in the same page where I am at. Okay, let's go ahead and read the problem. Students have measured different amounts of water into beakers for an experiment. The amount of water in each beaker is listed below. Okay, so one beaker has 1/4 cup, 1/4 cup, 1/2 cup, 3/4, and so on. Okay, if the total amount of water stayed the same, what would be the average amount of water in a beaker? So that's what we need to find. Okay, so this process is divided into different steps. Okay, 6 steps. First step is to count the number of cups for each amount. Draw an X for the number of times each amount is recorded to complete the line plot. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to start with 1/4. How many 1/4s do we have here? Okay, and as I count, then I am going to cross them out. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, 7 1/4s. Okay, 1/4 has already 1, 2, 3, 4 x's. How many more x's do I need to draw to make 7? Okay, 3 more. 1, 2, 3 equals 7. Okay, the same thing, I'm going to do the same thing with 1/2. And as I count, I'm going to cross them out. So 1/2, it's right here. 1 and 2, and that's it. Okay, so for 1/2, I need 2 x's. Okay, and the last fraction is 3/4. Okay, so as I count it, I am going to cross them out. 1, 2, 3. I already have 1, so I need 2 more to make it 3. Okay, so that's step number 1. Step number 2, find the total. Oops, sorry, we forgot something about step number 1. So 1/4, how many x's were on top of 1/4? 7. How many x's are on top of 1/2? 2. How many x's are on top of 3/4? 3. Okay, so this information is also part of step number 1. Moving on to step number 2. Find the total amount of water in all of the beakers that contain 1/4 cup of water. Okay, so how many beakers are with 1/4 cup of water? How many x's are on top of 1/4? 7. So 7 goes on this line. There are 7 beakers with 1/4 cup of water. So how many fourths are there? 7 fourths, or 7 fourths written as a fraction equals 7 on the top as a numerator and 4 on the bottom as a denominator. 7 fourths. Okay, and then we need to simplify. Okay, this is a fraction greater than 1, so we divide 7 by 4. How many times does 4 fit into 7 without going over? 1. Okay, what is 7 minus 4? 3. And we use the same denominator of 4. Okay, so the average or the total amount of the beakers that contain 1/4 water, cups of water, is this number right here, 1 3/4. Okay, so that's step number 2. Step number 3, find the total amount of water in all of the beakers that contain 1/2 cup of water. How many beakers contain 1/2 cup of water? 2. Okay, so we want to write that number in the first line. There are 2 beakers with 1/2 cup of water. So there are 2 halves, or 2 halves written as a fraction with which equals to 1 cup. Remember that if the numerator and the denominator are the same number, that will always equal 1 whole. All right? Step number 4 would be to count how many beakers contain 3/4 cups of water. Okay, so we're gonna go up and see how many x's are on top of 3/4. I have 3 x's, so that means that I have 3, okay, times 3/4. Okay, so that number of x's is already there. We multiply by the fraction. What is 3 times 3? 9. And remember that a whole number will always have 1 as its denominator. When we are multiplying fractions, we multiply numerator times numerator and denominator times denominator. So what is 1 times 4? 4. Then we simplify. Okay, how many times does 4 fit into 9 without going over? I think it's 2, because 2 times 4 equals 8. 9 minus 8 would be 1, and I use the same denominator of 4. Okay, final step. Well, step number 5, the one before the final step, would be to add all of the totals. All of the totals. Okay, so we already have the totals right here. Okay, 1 3/4 plus 1 plus 2 and 1/4. Okay, so let's go ahead and start by adding the fractions first. 3/4 plus 1/4 would be 4/4, right? And remember that if the numerator and the denominator is the same number, that will equal 1 whole. Okay, now let's add the whole numbers. 1 plus 1 equals 2. 2 plus 2 equals 4. And don't forget this number that we got from the fractions. 4 plus 1 would be 5. Okay, so that would be our answer when we add all of this together. Okay, step number 6. Divide the sum you found in step 5 by the number of beakers to find the average. Okay, so the sum is 5. Where did this 12 come from? It came from the number of beakers. But how can I find the number of beakers? Okay, there's 2 ways we can find the number of beakers. Going all the way to the top, counting all of the fractions that are right here in our problem. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Okay, so there's a total of 12 beakers. Another way to find that number is to count the x's. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So that is where that 12 came from. That 12 represents the number of beakers. Okay, so very simple. Remember that a division sentence could be written as a fraction, with your dividend being your numerator and your divisor being your denominator. Okay? And that is it. So the average amount of water in a beaker is 5/12. Okay? So this doesn't mean that you need to do this, of course. Okay, because if you do this, you will end up as having your quotient being a decimal. We do not want that because we're working with fractions. Okay, so the only thing that you need to do is change this division problem into a fraction. Okay, remember that your dividend, which is the first number, the number that's being divided, is your numerator, and the divisor, which is the number you're using to divide the first number, is your denominator. Okay, if you have the chance of simplifying, of course you want to do that additional step, which is to simplify. In this case, we cannot simplify. Okay, we can't. Okay, 5 and 12, it stays the same. We cannot make it smaller. Okay, I'm going to record the next page on a different video, all right?